Welcome to Exit Philosophy Wildcard Edition. We'll be back later in the week. Mal is on his way back from vacation, and he'll join me for our regular Exit Philosophy on the weekend. But for now, we will preview the 4 wildcard series that are upcoming. And I first want to congratulate the Blue Jays for winning the American League East. They knew what they had to do. I think everybody knew what they had to do because looking at the Yankees schedule and knowing that the Yankees are the Yankees, you knew that facing the Orioles, the White Sox, and then the Orioles again, they were going to almost win every game. And they did. They won 8 out of 9. And the Blue Jays had a lead. It looked like they squandered it. They lost 4 straight games in the middle of that. But then they bounced back, and the Jays did what the Jays do, which is rely on the entire team, rely on the entire 28-man roster in September. And it wasn't Vlad, it wasn't Bo, who's on the IL still. It was all the other guys. And the one guy that really came through on the Sunday when they needed it was Alejandro Kirk, who had been 5 for 50 earlier in September. But I think, of course, we've discussed the workload that he's had. He'd never had more than 89 starts behind the plate in any season, and that was in 2024. And he was already at 108, 109. So it was understandable that he was hitting a wall of some kind, especially offensively. But then the adrenaline kicks in on the final weekend, knowing what they had to do. And the Alejandro Kirk we all know and love came through with a grand slam in the first inning and a big 2-run homer later on to build the lead back up to 4. So congratulations to the Jays. But I do believe that I will label the Toronto Blue Jays the American League champion that everybody wants to face. There is no fear of other teams. And that's not saying there's no respect. Respect is different than fear. And the respect is that over 162 games, the Blue Jays did what they have to do. The rotation was strong and steady throughout the course of the year. The bullpen had its ups and downs, but it came through at the end and had some really good a stretch of games, including the bullpen game that set them up to be where they are right now, which is having a bye into the division series, which is their ultimate goal, looking at the Yankees and knowing what they had to do. But in terms of nobody fearing the Toronto Blue Jays, they don't have a lineup that features guys like Aaron Judge and Stanton, who has a reputation in the postseason. They don't have that kind of a lineup. They got George Springer, and everyone was surprised by that. But Vlad is not being the bell cow that he needs to be, that he might still be. But again, no starting pitchers that really instill fear like Garrett Crochet. They don't have that middle of the order bat who really instills fear like Aaron Judge. And so the bullpen is up and down. You don't know what Jeff Hoffman's going to do in the 9th inning of any game. So what I'm saying here is that there are 5 other American League teams and 11 other playoff teams that would not mind seeing the Blue Jays ahead of them in a 5 or a 7 game series. So it's not a lack of respect for the Jays, and that's the bulletin board material that they'll say. And if they win a series, they'll go, nobody believed in us, which is not true. But the fact is, they don't instill fear in anybody. So that being said, I want to address also the fact that the next CBA, the next collective bargaining agreement, Major League Baseball owners are going to try and get the salary cap in. And what works against them there, and it's laughable, is that the Milwaukee Brewers won the National League, and they have the 23rd out of 30 highest payroll, 23rd. And the New York Mets, of course, infamously folded like a cheap suit, and they're anything but a cheap suit. So that is going to work against the owners. That's great for the Players Association. That's great for the argument that Major League Baseball does not need a salary cap. And we can just examine the 12 teams that got into the postseason. And of the top 10, I'll break it down by segments of payroll. The top 10 payrolls, 5 got into the postseason, including the Yankees at 3, the Blue Jays at 5, the Dodgers at 1, and the Padres at 9. 4 came from the middle echelon, from 11 to 20. And that includes the Red Sox, the Tigers, the Mariners, and the Cubs. And only 3 from the bottom third of payrolls got in, which is, to me, a pretty good showing by the bottom 3. You had Cincinnati, Milwaukee, and the Cleveland Guardians. So for ownership to argue that they do need a payroll or the sport will suffer, I think they can't make that argument. And this was such a tremendous final couple of weeks in Major League Baseball in terms of the competitive aspect of teams still thinking and still believing that they could make it into the postseason, and the comeback by the Guardians and the Jays and the Yankees battle to the very end. It was so compelling. Everything was compelling about it. Now we'll get into the wild card series individually. We'll start in the American League. Wild card series 1 is the Boston Red Sox at the New York Yankees at Yankee Stadium. All 3 games, as fans know, will be played in the same venue. And I like that. That's better than a 1-game playoff in my mind. There's no doubt. It allows you to lose a game and come back and still have a chance to win. So I'm going to compare all 4 of these series in 5 categories: rotation, bullpen, lineup, defense, and manager. So we'll go Boston at New York first. Rotation, even with Garrett Crochet pitching for the Red Sox at the front end in game 1, I got to favor the Yankees in the rotation. They've got Rodon, Max Fried, and Cam Schlittler. I got to be careful how I say that. But the thing about that is 2 left-handers at the top of the Yankee rotation, and there's so many left-handed hitters. So much of the Red Sox batting order is left-handed. It would tend to nullify. We go to the bullpen. You got to go with the Red Sox over the Yankees. The Yankees thought they were bringing in 4 closers, and certainly Bednar's done the job for them since an early hiccup that he had when he came over at the deadline. But the rest of the bullpen doesn't measure up to Aroldis Chapman, who's having a resurgent year, still throwing over 100, and Whitlock, who is a terrific setup man at this point. And then they've got some young arms that are throwing close to 100 miles an hour, all of them coming out of the pen. Plus, the Red Sox have 4 lefties in their bullpen and possibly 5 by the time they get to it. And the Yankees are also have a lot of big left-handed bats in their lineup. On defense, I got to give the edge to Boston. We've all seen, especially in games against the Blue Jays that we've all watched, the Yankee defense has been terrible. It has been fundamentally unsound. It's the highlights that you see all the time on TV. So definitely going with the Red Sox on defense. And then manager Alex Cora and Aaron Boone both have had their moments over time, but this year was not that time. This year was one where they were both criticized heavily, especially Aaron Boone. And I think that I would give it a tie at this point just because they've both had success, but they've both been criticized. American League Series 2, Detroit at Cleveland. Detroit, first of all, believed that they weren't going to have to be playing in a wild card round. And so that's a little disappointing for them. Cleveland is on a roll. They're playing at home. They weren't expecting to even be in the playoffs. about a month ago. And so that's already an advantage for the Guardians. But in terms of Tigers and Guardians rotation, even with Tarek Skubal, I got to go with the Guardians rotation. They've been carrying them down the stretch, carrying them in September, and they will carry that momentum into the wild card round. Gavin Williams starting in the first game, and they have a lefty rookie who's come out of nowhere, made 7 starts, Parker Messick, and he gives the advantage to Cleveland in a best 2 out of 3 series. And in terms of the bullpen, who would have thought that Emmanuel Clase, when he went down for spiking balls in the dirt for his friends, or allegedly leading to a suspension while they investigate some gambling issues, that Clase, when he left, that's when the team would turn it around. And Cade Smith, the Canadian, has really solidified that back end of that bullpen. And to me, that gives the advantage to the Guardians in the bullpen. Lineup, I got to go with the Tigers. Although Jose Ramirez is the best hitter in the series, the Tigers top to bottom have a lineup that can contribute over 9 innings, and that's going to me, spell the difference. Defensively, I got to give it to the Tigers again. Guardians, they've got some good defenders, but the Tigers, to me, carry the day in that regard. And then the managers, A.J. Hinch and Stephen Vogt. To me, it's a saw-off like it was in the Yankee-Red Sox series, only this is at a higher level than Cora and Boone. This is Hinch and Vogt. Both of them have been managers of the year at various times. And you don't get much better in a managerial matchup than that. Then we'll go to the National League Series 1, which is Cincinnati at the Dodgers, at Dodger Stadium. But to me, the story of this series is the managers in terms of Terry Francona and Dave Roberts, who's they're intertwined. Their careers are intertwined from that World Series in Boston, where the Dave Roberts stolen base set up the entire scenario of breaking the curse of the Bambino. And Terry Francona was right at the heart of that. So to see them come together as opposing managers is going to be spectacular. It's going to be something to pay attention to that series for. And I give the edge to Francona because Francona is a friend of mine. In terms of rotation, Hunter Green, best pitcher in the series, but I got to give the Dodgers the nod in the rotation with Snell, Yamamoto, and Glasnow if he's able to go. The only thing about the Dodgers rotation is that they don't tend to go 7, 8, 9 innings. So then you get to the bullpen, where the Dodgers bullpen, even though they have higher profile, bigger names, higher payroll, has been an issue for the Dodgers coming down the stretch. And the bullpen for the Reds is really a no-name. They haven't been on this big stage on the platform before. And so it's going to be difficult to give the edge to the Reds. So I'll give that as a tie, a saw-off. Lineups. My favorite player in baseball right now is Ellie De La Cruz, shortstop for the Reds. But that being said, you can't really go against the Dodgers batting order as deep as it is with superstars who have been there just as recently as last season. Defensively, I'd give that a saw-off. Both of them have issues, but there's gold gloves around the field. Ke'Bryan Hayes at third base for the Reds, and you got Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, and some other really good gloves around the Dodgers diamond. So in that series, I'm saying that the Reds will upset the Dodgers in 3 games. And I don't know if I gave the Detroit-Cleveland preview, but I'm taking the Guardians in 3 games in that series. Finally, for the National League, we'll go Padres against the Cubs. Padres at Wrigley Field against the Cubs. That's going to be a great series too. Rotation, you got Canadian Nick Pivetta and Dylan Cease behind him, 1-2 in the Padres rotation. You got Matt Boyd, former Blue Jay, starting game 1 for the Cubs. I got to go with the Padres rotation. I got to go with the Padres bullpen. They loaded up at the deadline. They got Robert Suarez, and they got Mason Miller from the Sacramento Athletics. And so I'm going 100% with the Padres bullpen. And you know how important bullpens are in the postseason. So you got a good idea where I'm going with this. The lineup, the mercenary lineup of really good players for the Padres. It doesn't match up to the clubhouse camaraderie of the Blue Jays, for instance. But these guys can play. These guys can hit. They know what needs to be done. And Wrigley Field is a good environment for them. The Cubs lineup, Pete Crow Armstrong faded, Kyle Tucker not like he was in the first half, and have a pretty disappointing year headed to free agency. Defensively, got to give the edge to the Cubs. Manager, I'm not a big Mike Shildt fan for the Padres. Craig Counsell, great reputation, great manager, but still I'm giving the Padres that series in 2, even though it's at Wrigley Field. So congratulations once again to the Toronto Blue Jays for winning the division with 94 victories over 74 from a year ago. That's a pretty damn good improvement, and you got to commend them for that. And once again, don't say that it's a lack of respect. I think it's a lack of expectation for a team that hasn't been there in a long time, haven't won a division since 2015. But for this generation of Blue Jays fans, this is their team, and they need to enjoy it and move forward with it. And on the regular edition of Exit Philosophy, Mal and I will be back to preview that Blue Jays series. But for now, I want to thank my subscribers to Griff's the Pitch and Exit Philosophy. And don't forget to leave a comment, like, and share with your friends. Thanks, and we'll talk to you later this week.